Hello, everyone, and welcome to this podcast recorded to you from Barbados. I am Noha Saad, and I'm the Gender Specialist and Spotlight Initiative Coordinator with the United Nations Development Program, or in short, UNDP. This podcast is one of the activities of the Spotlight Initiative Regional Program in the Caribbean to commemorate the 16 days of activism to end gender-based violence, which kicks off every year on the 25th of November and runs on until the 10th of December. Today, we have a very special guest, Ms. Elizabeth Riley, Executive Director for the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, in short, CDEMA. Welcome, Ms. Riley. It is such a pleasure to have you. And before we start our conversation, let me just give our audience some background about the Spotlight Initiative. The Spotlight Initiative was launched by the European Union and the United Nations. It is a multi-year program aimed at addressing all forms of violence against women and girls and harmful practices globally. In the Caribbean, it focuses on gender-based violence, specifically family violence. It is based on 6 pillars that are legislation and policy, strengthening institutions, preventions and social norms, delivery of high-quality essential services, data availability, and supporting the women's movement. UNDP is one of the implementing UN agencies of the Spotlight Initiative in the Caribbean, and one of our interventions is supporting CDEMA in its ongoing work to integrate family violence and gender-based violence to disaster risk reduction and disaster risk management. So without further ado, I will start with my first question to you, Ms. Riley, which is, during and after disaster events, it has been shown that gender-based violence increases in families and communities that were already exposed to it. What are 2 key areas you think CDEMA participating states need to prioritize for integrating family violence and violence against women in disaster response and recovery efforts?
Thank you so much for inviting CDEMA to participate in the program. And this topic is very important. In fact, gender has been identified as a cross-cutting theme under our regional comprehensive disaster management strategy. And we also know that from putting a gender lens on situation analysis of disaster response and recovery efforts, that gender roles and responsibilities can result in differential exposure and impact of disasters, and that women, girls, men, and boys are affected differently by disasters due to gendered roles, identities, and responsibilities. So from the CDEMA perspective, the 2 areas I would suggest for prioritization by the CDEMA participating states are, first, the area of training and capacity building. There is a need to strengthen understanding of the issue of violence against women and girls and how it can be treated through programming. And CDEMA's Regional Training Center does offer, in collaboration with our partners, some initiatives which have a special focus on the issue of gender-based violence and violence against women and girls, targeted to specific stakeholders, which include our national disaster offices, shelter managers, key officers, for example, in our Safe Schools initiative, and also for vulnerable groups. The second suggestion I would make is that participating states need to utilize the Integrating Gender and Disaster Management in Small Island Developing States tool, which has been prepared by the UNDP. It is a gender mainstreaming tool, which can be applied at the project and the programming level. And the tool can also work as a checklist for our participating states for integrating gender considerations throughout the project cycle, including for disaster response and recovery.
Can you provide a few examples of how CDEMA's programs are addressing the integration of violence against women and girls in disaster risk reduction in participating states?
I want to start my response by speaking to actions that we are taking to improve the internal capacity at the coordinating unit for these areas. And the coordinating unit staff members are participating in training as they become available on areas such as the minimum initial services package for sexual and reproductive health in crisis situations. And this is very important because if we are to support our participating states in integrating violence against women and girls in disaster risk reduction, it is important that our own team understands the issues as well. So other examples of how we are working in this area are first in the area of response, where our deployment teams, which are oriented every year under the umbrella of our regional response mechanism to provide support to states that are impacted by hazards. These deployment team members are oriented in areas which are inclusive of sexual harassment, gender-based violence, and violence against women and girls. And this orientation and training is done through collaboration with our United Nations partners, including UN Women and UNFPA. And these are sensitization sessions incorporated into the broader deployment training sessions. We also have participated, and we are participating in the Regional Essential Services Package Community of Practice for the Caribbean region. And this is an initiative under the Spotlight Initiative as well. And it provides a very unique opportunity to address family violence as a major public health and development issue that has significant ramifications at the individual, community, national, and regional levels. And it also provides a guidance tool which identifies the essential services to be provided to all women and girls who have experienced gender-based violence, including services that should be provided by the health, social services, public, and justice sectors. And the package itself also provides guidelines for the coordination of these services, and in which CDEMA will play a significant role as a standing member. Two other areas I want to mention are in the area of monitoring and evaluation, and our comprehensive disaster management audit tool, which is applied within our participating states approximately every 3 years or so, has components which assess the mainstreaming of gender considerations, and this includes gender-based violence, specifically violence against women and girls and family violence into the disaster risk management cycle. And upcoming, in terms of the planned programming by the agency, we are in the process of updating the agency's regional training centers disaster risk management course. It is under review to ensure that gender-based violence and violence against women and girls is integrated as a part of the cross-cutting gender component under the comprehensive disaster management strategy.
We are happy that the Spotlight Initiative and UNDP are also part of supporting your work in integrating gender-based violence in your courses and your guidelines. My last question to you would be, where does your agency like to see CDEMA participating states moving towards in the next 3 to 5 years, as it relates, of course, to integrating gender-based violence in disaster response and recovery efforts?
An evaluation of the extent of gender-responsive disaster preparedness and recovery efforts in 9 Caribbean countries revealed that there's an overall lack of consideration of gender-based violence in disaster risk management policies, as well as a limited provision of the required psychosocial and supportive services which are needed for women and girls during emergencies. As such, we have suggested 4 key areas that we think need to be addressed as we go forward over the next 3 to 5 year period. And they include 1, the need for more systematic gender analysis and the engagement of vulnerable groups in the development of disaster risk management policies, plans, strategies, and assessments, such as post-disaster needs, vulnerability and capacity, risk, and hazard analysis. 2, we believe that there's a need for strengthened data protocols for the collection of disaggregated data, taking into account sex and age and other demographic data to inform gender-sensitive planning and decision-making. 3rd, through monitoring and evaluation of the extent of gender mainstreaming to ensure that we're in a position to take corrective actions. And finally, through the promotion of more awareness and programs on the importance of gender-sensitive budgeting to ensure that more budgetary support is provided to address the areas of gender-based violence and violence against women and girls.
This has been very beneficial, and thank you so much for your time. I hope that our audience found this information useful and enjoyed our conversation. This podcast will be posted during the 16 days of activism, so stay tuned. We are also planning to have more of these interviews with our experts and partners working towards ending gender-based violence, and especially under the Spotlight Initiative. If you have a specific topic that you would like us to cover, please comment in the comments section or send us a message via our social media pages posted here. So Instagram, it's at Spotlight Initiative. Our website is americalatinaprimera.org or on CDEMA's Facebook page. Finally, just to highlight that UNDP continues to work with its partners on advancing the gender equality agenda. And Spotlight's initiative has given us the space and opportunity to do that in a multi-sectoral approach and address violence against women in the Caribbean. I hope that everyone stays safe and see you in the next podcast. Thank you.